What if you came home from a long work trip and found your own wife and her 2 brothers packing up your house like you were already dead? They looked me right in the eyes and said, "Just accept it, Mark. The house is ours now." I smiled. I nodded. And then I destroyed every single one of them. This is the story of how my wife's cheating and her family's greed handed me the perfect Revan. I'm Mark Thompson, 34 years old. I work as a structural engineer for a big construction company in Denver, Colorado. For the last 8 years, I poured everything I had into one dream: our house. Not just any house. The house I designed and rebuilt with my own hands on weekends. A beautiful 3-bedroom Victorian on a quiet street with a big backyard. I paid for every nail, every tile, every mortgage payment. It was supposed to be our forever home. The place where we'd raise kids and grow old together. My wife's name is Emily. She's 31. We met in college, dated for 4 years, got married 6 years ago. She works part-time at a dental office. Everyone always said we were the perfect couple. I believed it too, until 3 months ago. Started small. I noticed she was on her phone more than usual. She'd laugh at texts and then quickly lock the screen when I walked into the room. I told myself I was being paranoid. I was away a lot for work, sometimes 2 or 3 weeks at a time on big projects. I trusted her. Then one night in February, I came home early from a site in Wyoming. I wanted to surprise her. I pulled into the driveway at 11 p.m., killed the engine, and saw 2 cars I didn't recognize parked in front of the house. One belonged to her older brother Troy, the other to her younger brother Jake. Both of them had been living rent-free with their mom for years. They never liked me much. They always said I was too controlling, because I actually expected Emily to help pay bills. I walked in quietly. The living room lights were on low. I heard Emily laughing, that soft laugh she used to save only for me. Then I heard Troy's voice. "Relax, Em. Mark's not coming back till next week. We've got time to move everything out before he even knows." My stomach dropped like I'd been punched. I stepped into the doorway. All 3 of them froze. Emily was sitting on the couch in my favorite hoodie. Troy and Jake were carrying boxes labeled kitchen stuff toward the garage. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Emily stood up, crossed her arms, and looked me dead in the eyes. "Mark, we need to talk." I didn't yell. I just asked, voice calm, "What the hell is going on?" She didn't even flinch. "I'm done, Mark. I've been seeing someone else for almost 2 years. Troy and Jake have been helping me. The house is in both our names, but I've talked to a lawyer. You've been gone so much it's basically abandonment. We're taking the house. You can have your clothes and tools. Just accept it." Jake smirked behind her. "Yeah, man. Don't make this ugly." I felt the floor tilt under my feet. 2 years. My best friend from high school. No, wait, it wasn't even him. It was Troy. Her own brother had been helping her cheat? No. Later I learned it was worse. She'd been sleeping with a guy from her office, and her brothers had been covering for her the whole time. They saw the house as their golden ticket. Emily had convinced them that once I was out, they could all live there rent-free and flip it for profit. I stood there in my own living room, the room I had painted soft gray because she said it calmed her anxiety, and I felt something inside me snap into ice. I smiled. I actually smiled. "Okay," I said quietly, "if that's what you want." Emily looked surprised. Troy and Jake exchanged glances like they'd won the lottery. I walked upstairs, packed one suitcase with clothes and my laptop, and left the same night. I checked into a cheap motel down the street. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the edge of the bed and started planning. Because here's what they didn't know. I had been documenting everything for months. Every weird text notification. Every late night she said she was with the girls. I had hidden cameras in the garage and basement. Not because I suspected cheating at first, but because I was worried about theft while I was away on jobs. Those cameras had been rolling the whole time. And the house? Yeah, it was in both our names. But I had paid 92% of the down payment and all the mortgage for 6 years. I had every receipt, every bank transfer, every text where Emily promised to pay me back later. I spent the next 3 days in that motel room, barely sleeping, building the biggest file of evidence anyone had ever seen. Bank records, credit card statements showing her buying lingerie and hotel rooms, screenshots from the hidden cameras catching her and her boyfriend in our bed while I was gone. On day 4, I called my lawyer, a shark named Rebecca who specialized in high-conflict divorces. She listened to the whole story and said one sentence that changed everything. "Mark, they just handed you a winning hand. Now we play it." That was the beginning. Emily and her brothers thought they had won. They moved into my house the very next week. They posted pictures on Facebook smiling in my backyard like they owned the American dream. They had no idea what was coming, because I wasn't just going to take the house back. I was going to take everything they had ever touched, their reputations, their money, their sense of safety, and burn it to the ground. And the craziest part? The first strange thing happened the night I left. I was lying in the motel bed around 2 a.m. when I smelled it. Emily's perfume, that vanilla one she wore every day, mixed with the faint smell of the cologne her boyfriend used. It filled the room for about 10 seconds, even though the window was closed and no one was there. Then it vanished. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But deep down I knew it wasn't. Something was watching. Something was angry. And it was on my side. I didn't go back to the house for 2 full weeks. I stayed in that cheap motel, living on takeout and black coffee, while my lawyer Rebecca built the case like a general preparing for war. Every morning I woke up to new evidence she had dug up. Every night I reviewed footage from the hidden cameras I had installed months earlier. The videos were worse than I imagined. I watched Emily and her boyfriend, a guy named Ryan who worked at the same dental office, in our bedroom, in our kitchen, even once on the couch I had bought for her birthday. Her brothers Troy and Jake were there too, laughing, drinking my beer, helping carry out boxes of my tools while I was supposed to be 3 states away. One clip showed Emily sitting on the kitchen counter telling Ryan, "Mark is so clueless. He still thinks I'm happy. Once the house is in my name only, we can sell it and split everything." Troy and Jake get their cut for helping. Ryan laughed and kissed her. "You're evil, babe. I love it." I watched that clip 14 times. Not because it hurt anymore, because every time I watched it, the cold rage inside me grew sharper and clearer. Rebecca called me on a Thursday afternoon. "Mark, we have them. The prenup you made her sign before marriage is ironclad. It states any infidelity voids her claim to marital assets beyond 50-50 split of joint accounts. But more importantly, we have proof of fraud. She and her brothers forged documents trying to transfer the house title without your signature. That's a felony." I stared at the motel ceiling. "What do we do next?" Rebecca's voice was calm but excited. "We file for divorce immediately. We freeze all joint accounts. We send a formal letter demanding they vacate the property within 7 days. And then, we hit them with everything at once." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Good. Let's make it hurt." That same evening I drove past the house slowly. The lights were on. Emily's car was in the driveway next to Troy's truck. I could see shadows moving inside. My shadows in my house. I didn't stop. I just kept driving and made one phone call to an old friend who owed me a favor. A private investigator named Carl who used to work fraud cases for the DA's office. "Carl, I need eyes on the house 24/7 starting tonight. I want to know every person who walks in or out. And I want proof of anything illegal they do while they're living there." Carl didn't ask questions. He just said, "You got it, buddy. They won't even know I'm watching." The next 7 days were quiet on the surface. Emily texted me a few times. Short messages like, "We need to talk like adults," and "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I never replied. I let her think I was broken and hiding. On day 8, the formal letter from Rebecca arrived at the house. Certified mail. Emily signed for it herself. According to Carl's report, she read it at the kitchen table with Troy and Jake. Then she laughed. She actually laughed and said, "He's bluffing. He doesn't have the balls to fight us. We'll just ignore it." They didn't leave. Instead, they threw a party that weekend. Loud music, people I didn't know, beer cans thrown in my backyard. Troy posted a picture on Facebook with the caption, "New chapter. Finally free from the controlling husband face with tears of joy." That was their first mistake. Because while they were celebrating, I was meeting with Rebecca and a real estate appraiser. We calculated the exact value of the house, $685,000. I had put in $412,000 of my own money over the years. Emily had contributed less than $40,000 total. Rebecca looked at me across the conference table. You ready for the next step? I nodded. Monday morning we filed the divorce papers and a civil lawsuit for fraud, conversion of property, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. At the same time, I filed a police report for the forged documents. By Tuesday afternoon, the sheriff's department showed up at the house with an order to vacate within 48 hours. Emily called me screaming, "You bastard! You can't do this. This is my house too." I let her yell for a full minute before I spoke, voice calm and steady. "Emily, you told me to accept it. Now I'm asking you to accept reality. Get out, or I will have you removed." She hung up on me. That night Carl sent me new footage. Emily, Troy, and Jake were arguing in the living room. Troy was drunk and yelling, "We should just burn the place down before we leave. Fuck him." Jake laughed nervously. "Don't be stupid, man." But Emily didn't say no. The next morning I woke up to the smell again. Emily's vanilla perfume mixed with Ryan's cologne. It filled the motel room stronger than before. For 10 full seconds it felt like someone was standing right next to the bed. Then it disappeared. I sat up, heart pounding, and whispered into the empty room, "If you're here, help me finish this." Nothing answered, but the air felt heavier, like it was listening. Later that day, the real revenge began. I received a call from my bank. Because the mortgage was in both names, but I had always made the payments, the bank agreed to work with me. They froze the joint account and started the process to remove Emily's name from the mortgage once the divorce was finalized. At the same time, Rebecca sent cease and desist letters to Emily's employer and to Ryan's employer. The letters detailed the affair, the use of company time for personal meetings, and the fraudulent attempt to steal marital property. Both companies launched internal investigations within hours. Emily lost her part-time job by Friday. Ryan was suspended pending review. Troy and Jake started getting calls from their own creditors, because I quietly paid a collections agency to accelerate every old debt they had ignored for years. Small things, but enough to make their lives uncomfortable. They still refused to leave the house. So on day 15, I did the one thing I knew would break them. I changed the locks myself, with 2 police officers standing by to enforce the court order. Emily, Troy, and Jake were given exactly 1 hour to remove their personal belongings under supervision. I stood on the sidewalk and watched them carry boxes out. Emily was crying now. Real tears, not the fake ones she used on me. Troy looked pale and angry. Jake kept muttering threats under his breath. When Emily walked past me with the last box, she stopped. "You're going to regret this, Mark. I swear you will." I looked her straight in the eyes and said the words I had practiced in my head for weeks. "No, Emily. You already made me regret the last 6 years. Now it's your turn." She got into Troy's truck and they drove away. That night, I walked back into my house for the first time since the night I left. It was a mess. Holes in the walls where they had ripped out fixtures. My tools were gone. The backyard was trashed with cigarette butts and empty bottles. But it was mine again. I sat on the floor in the empty living room and breathed in the silence. Then I smelled it again, not perfume this time. It was the faint scent of my own aftershave mixed with sawdust. The smell of all the weekends I had spent building this house. It wrapped around me like a hug. For the first time in weeks, I cried. Not from sadness. From relief. The house was empty, but I wasn't alone. Something or someone was still here with me, watching, waiting, and very, very angry at the people who had tried to take what was mine. The real destruction of Emily and her brothers had only just begun, because I still had months of divorce proceedings ahead, and I planned to use every single day to make sure they never felt safe again. I spent the first night back in the house sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag. No furniture, no curtains, just the bare walls and the faint smell of sawdust that seemed to follow me from room to room. Felt strange, but also right, like the house was breathing again now that the wrong people were gone. The next morning I started fixing things. I patched the holes in the walls, replaced the broken light fixtures, and cleaned every inch of the kitchen. Every screw I drove in felt like taking back a piece of my life. Carl kept sending me updates. Emily, Troy, and Jake had moved back in with their mother in a small apartment on the east side of Denver. They were angry, loud, and already running out of money. Rebecca called me that afternoon with good news and bad news. Good news first, she said. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. They cannot come within 500 feet of the house or contact you directly. The divorce is moving fast because of the evidence of infidelity and fraud. I waited. Bad news? I asked. She's fighting dirty. Emily filed a counterclaim saying you were emotionally abusive and that she feared for her safety. She's asking for alimony and half the house value plus punitive damages. Her brothers are backing her story. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let her try. We have the videos. We have the bank records. We have everything. Rebecca's voice turned serious. Mark, be careful. People who feel cornered do stupid things. Keep the security cameras running. Document everything. I did exactly that. Over the next 3 weeks, I turned the house into a fortress of proof. New cameras inside and outside. Motion sensors. A safe where I kept printed copies of every document. I even hired a cleaning crew and a photographer to document the damage they had caused before I fixed it. Every receipt went into the file. Meanwhile, their lives started falling apart in public. Ryan was fired from the dental office after the investigation confirmed the affair happened on company time and property. Emily lost her part-time job permanently. Troy got hit with a lawsuit from his old landlord for unpaid rent from 2 years ago. I had quietly bought the debt and pushed it forward. Jake's truck got repossessed because he had missed payments for months, and I made sure the collections agency knew exactly where to find him. They started posting on social media. Long rants calling me a monster, a controlling husband, a liar. Emily posted a photo of herself crying with the caption, "When the person you trusted most turns out to be abusive." The comments were split. Some people believed her. Most didn't. But the damage was done. Her friends and family started choosing sides. One night around 11 p.m., Carl called me. "Mark, you need to see this. They're at the house right now." I pulled up the live camera feed on my laptop. Emily, Troy, and Jake were standing on the sidewalk across the street, staring at the house. Emily was crying. Troy was yelling something I couldn't hear. Jake looked nervous. They didn't cross the 500-foot line, but they stayed there for almost an hour just watching. The next morning I found a note taped to my mailbox. It was in Emily's handwriting. "You think you won? This isn't over. You ruined my life. I hope you're happy living alone in that big empty house." I took a photo of the note, added it to the evidence folder, and didn't reply. But that night, the strange things started again. I was sitting in the living room, now with a new couch I had bought, when I smelled Emily's vanilla perfume again. Stronger this time. It moved through the room like someone was walking past me. Then it mixed with the smell of cheap beer and cigarette smoke. Exactly the way Troy and Jake smelled when they were in the house. I stood up slowly. "If you're still here," I said quietly to the empty room, "I could use a little help making sure they never come back." The air grew cold for a few seconds. Then the smell vanished. The next day things escalated. Emily's mother called me. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail screaming that I was destroying her children and that God would punish me. I saved it. Then Troy showed up at my job site. He waited until I was walking to my truck after work and tried to confront me in the parking lot. "You think you're smart?" he shouted. "You took everything from my sister. She's crying every night because of you." I stayed calm. 2 of my coworkers were watching from nearby. "Troy, you helped her cheat and steal my house. You broke into my home and trashed it. Stay away from me or the next call is to the police." He stepped closer, fists clenched. "You're going to regret this." Security cameras at the job site caught the whole thing. I sent the footage to Rebecca the same hour. The judge was not amused. He extended the restraining order and warned Emily's family that any further contact would result in jail time. But they didn't stop. 2 nights later, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of glass breaking downstairs. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the bed and went down quietly. The back window in the kitchen was shattered. A rock lay on the floor with a note tied to it. "You deserve to burn." I called the police immediately. They came, took photos, and added it to the growing criminal file against Emily and her brothers. The next morning, Rebecca had more news. The divorce mediator wants a meeting next week. Emily is demanding $150,000 plus the house. Her lawyer is aggressive. I looked at the pile of evidence on my dining table. Tell them we're ready. And tell them I'm countersuing for full ownership of the house, repayment of all my contributions, and damages for the fraud and destruction of property. The meeting was brutal. We sat in a conference room downtown. Emily looked thinner, eyes red from crying. Troy and Jake sat behind her like bodyguards. Her lawyer spoke first, painting me as the villain. I let Rebecca do the talking. She laid out the evidence one piece at a time: the videos, the bank statements, the forged documents, the police reports, the security footage of Troy threatening me. Halfway through, Emily started crying for real. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered. "I just wanted to be happy." I looked at her across the table, the woman I had loved for years, and felt nothing but cold distance. "You wanted to be happy by stealing my house and sleeping with another man while I was working to pay for it. That's not happiness, Emily. That's greed." Her lawyer tried to interrupt, but the mediator shut him down. By the end of the meeting, the mediator recommended that Emily accept a settlement. She would get nothing from the house, repay $28,000 of the money she had taken from joint accounts, and the divorce would be finalized quickly with no alimony. Emily refused. She screamed at me as we left the building. "You'll never be happy again, Mark. I swear it." That night the house felt different. I was sitting in the living room when the lights flickered once. Then the smell came back. Vanilla perfume, cheap beer, and now something new. The faint scent of smoke, like something was burning far away. I stood up and walked through every room. Nothing was wrong. But when I checked the security camera footage the next morning, I saw something that made my skin crawl. At 2:47 a.m., 3 figures stood on the sidewalk again. Emily, Troy, and Jake. They were pointing at the house and arguing. Then Troy picked up a rock. The camera glitched for 3 seconds. When it came back, the rock was on the ground and all 3 of them were backing away quickly, looking scared. They left without throwing it. I watched that clip 5 times. Something had stopped them, and I was starting to believe it wasn't just luck. The pressure on Emily's family kept building. Her mother lost her part-time job because the dental office didn't want the drama. Troy got fired from his warehouse job after showing up drunk. Jake's girlfriend left him after seeing the Facebook posts and police reports. They were broke, angry, and cornered. And cornered animals bite the hardest. The final blow came on a rainy Thursday night. I was working late in the home office when my phone rang. It was Carl. "Mark, get to the house now. They're trying to break in." I drove home as fast as I could. When I arrived, 2 police cars were already there with lights flashing. Emily was in handcuffs in the back of one car. Troy and Jake were being questioned on the sidewalk. They had tried to break in through the back door with a crowbar. The security cameras caught everything clearly, including Emily saying on video, "If we can't have it, neither can he." The police arrested all 3 for violation of the restraining order and attempted burglary. I stood on my front porch watching them being taken away. Emily looked at me through the car window. Her eyes were full of hate and fear. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just nodded once. This was almost over. But the strangest part happened after the police left. I walked back inside the quiet house and sat down on the couch. The air grew warm, almost comforting. Then I heard it, very faint, like a whisper carried on the wind. It sounded like a man's voice saying 2 words. "Well done." I froze. The voice didn't come again. But for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt completely safe in my own home. The revenge wasn't finished yet. The divorce still needed final judgment. The civil lawsuit for damages was still pending. But the balance of power had shifted completely. Emily and her brothers had tried to take everything from me. Now they were losing everything they had. And something, whether it was my own determination, karma, or something I still couldn't explain, was making sure they paid for every single lie. The courtroom was quiet on the day the judge made the final ruling. I sat on one side with Rebecca. Emily sat on the other with her lawyer. Troy and Jake were not allowed inside because of the restraining order, but I could see their mother waiting nervously in the hallway. The judge didn't waste time. After reviewing all the evidence, the videos, the bank records, the police reports, the forged documents, the damage to the property, and the multiple violations of the court order, he looked directly at Emily. Mrs. Thompson, your actions throughout this marriage and its dissolution have been dishonest, fraudulent, and at times criminal. You and your family attempted to steal marital property through deception and intimidation. The court finds in favor of Mr. Thompson on all counts. Emily's shoulders started shaking. The judge continued. The house at 1427 Maplewood Drive will remain solely in Mr. Thompson's name. You are ordered to pay Mr. Thompson $87,400 in restitution for funds taken and damages caused. You will receive no alimony. The divorce is granted. Effective immediately. The gavel came down. It was over. Emily broke down completely in the courtroom. Not the pretty crying she used on social media. This was raw, ugly sobbing. Her lawyer tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away. As we walked out, she looked at me one last time. Her voice was hoarse. I loved you once, Mark. How did we end up here? I stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her. You stopped loving me the day you decided my house was worth more than our marriage. I just stopped pretending. I walked away without another word. That night, I sat alone in the house I had fought so hard to keep. The lights were warm. The new furniture smelled clean. The backyard had been restored. Everything looked normal again. But I wasn't the same man who had left that night months ago. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and raised it toward the empty room. To the house, I said quietly, and to whatever helped me keep it. The air shifted. I felt it clearly this time. A gentle warmth, like someone had placed a hand on my shoulder for just a second. Then it was gone. The next few weeks brought the final pieces of justice. Emily's mother lost the apartment they were all living in because they couldn't pay rent. Troy was charged with attempted burglary and violation of the restraining order. He took a plea deal and got 6 months in county jail. Jake got probation and community service. Emily was ordered to complete anger management classes and was placed on a year of supervised probation. Ryan, her boyfriend, moved to another state to escape the gossip. The dental office put out a quiet statement about inappropriate conduct. Social media turned on them. The same people who had believed Emily's victim story started seeing the police reports and court documents that Rebecca had made public. The comments changed from "poor Emily" to "how could she do that to her husband?" I didn't celebrate their downfall. I didn't post anything. I just focused on rebuilding. I started dating again, slowly. Nothing serious yet. Just coffee with a woman named Laura who worked at the architecture firm down the street. She made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in years. One Saturday afternoon, I was working in the backyard when Carl stopped by. He handed me a folder. Thought you might want to see this. Final update. Inside were recent photos. Emily was working as a cashier at a grocery store on the other side of town. She looked tired. Troy was still in jail. Jake had moved back to their mother's new small rental and was working construction, the kind of hard labor he used to mock me for doing. Carl patted my shoulder. You did good, Mark. Most men would have crumbled. You stood up. I closed the folder. I didn't do it alone. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask what I meant. That night I had the strangest dream. I was standing in the living room of the house, but it looked exactly like it did the day I finished building it. Fresh paint. New floors. Sunlight coming through the windows. 2 figures stood near the fireplace. One was a younger version of me, the man I was when I first bought the house with Emily, full of hope. The other was an older man I had never seen before. He wore work boots and a faded flannel shirt. He looked at me with kind but tired eyes. The older man spoke first. You protected what was yours. That's all a man can do. I asked him, who are you? He smiled faintly. Someone who once lost everything because he was too weak to fight. I'm glad you weren't. The younger version of me nodded. Don't forget to live in it now, not just protect it. When I woke up, the house was quiet, but on the coffee table, a place I had cleaned the night before, lay a single silver nail. An old-fashioned construction nail, the kind I used when I first built the deck 6 years ago. It wasn't there when I went to bed. I picked it up. It was warm to the touch. I smiled and placed it on the mantel above the fireplace. A reminder. Some things are worth fighting for. Some presences stay long after the fight is over. Months passed. The house became a home again. I hosted a small barbecue for my coworkers and new friends. Laura came. We sat on the deck I had rebuilt and watched the sunset. One evening, Emily sent me a message through her lawyer. It was short. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I hope you find peace. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Not out of hate, but because some chapters need to stay closed. I kept the house. I kept my dignity. I kept the strange, quiet protection that had walked beside me through the darkest months. And I finally understood something important. Revenge isn't always loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let someone take what you built with your own hands and your own heart. Sometimes it's waking up every morning in the house they tried to steal and choosing to live well. I still smell the faint vanilla perfume on rare nights, but now it doesn't scare me. It just passes through like an old memory that no longer has power. The house stands strong on Maplewood Drive, and so do I. My name is Mark Thompson. I am 34 years old. I lost a wife. I lost an illusion, but I gained something much stronger. I gained back myself. And no one, no matter how close they once were, will ever take that from me again.